June 19, 1944, 08:47. Hours, 15,000 feet above the Philippine Sea. The formation of Grumman F6F Hellcats, climbing through the morning sun, represented more than just a new aircraft. They were the vanguard of a tactical revolution. Pilots, appreciating their robust construction and immense fuel capacity, had affectionately dubbed them aluminum tanks. To the Japanese aviators they were about to encounter, they would soon become known by a far more ominous name: Shino Tsubasa, the Wings of Death. These carrier-based fighters, equipped with groundbreaking systems and overwhelming armament, were poised to shatter the long-held legend of zero-sen invincibility in a single, brutal afternoon of combat. Naval historians would later memorialize this day as the Great Mariana's Turkey Shoot. What transpired was not merely a tactical victory, but the complete psychological collapse of Japanese naval aviation dominance, a supremacy that had gripped the Pacific skies since the devastating attack on Pearl Harbor. This American defensive transformation had its roots in the hard-won lessons following the Pyrrhic Japanese victory at the Battle of the Philippine Sea in June 1943. Vice Admiral Jisaburo Ozawa, commanding the formidable 1st Mobile Fleet, had meticulously pored over every American carrier engagement since the pivotal Battle of Midway. From this analysis, he drew a conclusion that seemed unassailable based on 3 years of combat data. The Mitsubishi A6M0 retained undeniable superiority in maneuverability, and the unmatched skill of Japanese pilots would continue to dictate the terms of any aerial engagement. Aboard his flagship, the advanced carrier Taiho, Ozawa formalized this doctrine in Tactical Directive No. 7 on May 15, 1944. It unequivocally stated, "Our Zero squadrons shall engage enemy fighters at close range, where our superior maneuverability ensures victory. American fighters are heavy and slow. We shall use this inherent clumsiness against them. Victory belongs not to the strong, but to the agile." The established mathematics of aerial combat appeared to support his conviction. At the Battle of the Coral Sea, Zeros had achieved a kill ratio of 3.1. During the Eastern Solomons engagement, Japanese pilots had repeatedly demonstrated their masterful dogfighting prowess against the older, more cumbersome F4F Wildcats. The Zero's legendary turn radius of a mere 16 meters at combat speed made it a ghost in a turning fight, nearly impossible to outmaneuver using conventional tactics. Unbeknownst to Ozawa, however, American intelligence and engineering teams had been engaged in their own, even more comprehensive study. At the Naval Air Station Patuxent River in Maryland, dedicated combat analysis teams dissected every engagement report, scrutinized every frame of gun camera footage, and debriefed every returning pilot since the dark days of 1942. Their conclusion was revolutionary and would fundamentally reshape American fighter design philosophy. You cannot defeat the Zero by trying to outturn it. You defeat it by utterly refusing to fight on its terms. The weapon born from this revelation was forged in the crucible of desperation during the Guadalcanal campaign 18 months prior. On August 7, 1942, Marine and Navy pilots flying F4F Wildcats encountered Zero squadrons that could literally fly circles around them, turning inside their arcs of fire with impunity. The solution emerged from a close collaboration between the Grumman Aircraft Engineering Corporation and the Navy's Bureau of Aeronautics. Official Navy Department records confirm that design teams at Grumman's Bethpage facility were tasked with a singular, focused mission: to create a fighter from the ground up, specifically engineered to neutralize every advantage possessed by the Zero. The result was the F6F-3 Hellcat, a machine whose very DNA was coded for Pacific carrier operations against Japanese fighters. The technical specifications, as documented in Bureau of Aeronautics records, revealed a radically different design approach. The Hellcat was powered by a Pratt & Whitney R2800 double wasp radial engine, producing a staggering 2,000 horsepower, nearly double the output of the Zero's 130 horsepower Nakajima Sakai engine. The airframe weighed in at a robust 15,413 pounds fully loaded, a stark contrast to the Zero's featherweight 6,164 pounds. This disparity was intentional. Where Japanese designers pursued agility through minimal weight, the American philosophy championed sheer power and comprehensive protection. The divergence in design priorities was most evident in the area of survivability. The Hellcat incorporated 212 pounds of dedicated pilot armor plating, self-sealing fuel tanks with a 250-gallon capacity, and a bulletproof windscreen made from 3 inches of laminated glass. The Zero, in its pursuit of performance, carried none of these features. No pilot armor, no self-sealing tanks. These calculated risks, once justified by superior maneuverability, were now catastrophic vulnerabilities waiting to be exploited. Armament specifications further highlighted the opposing doctrines. The Hellcat was equipped with 6 Browning M2.50 caliber machine guns, each supplied with 400 rounds, for a total of 2,400 rounds of a devastating mix of armor-piercing and incendiary ammunition. The Zero, by comparison, carried only 2 light 7.7mm machine guns and 2 20mm cannons with severely limited ammunition. In a prolonged engagement, a Hellcat could unleash 10 times the weight of fire into the air. Initial flight trials at Naval Air Station Anacostia in March 1943 yielded performance data that stunned even the most experienced test pilots. The Hellcat demonstrated a maximum speed of 300 mph at 23,400 feet, over 60 Mach/s faster than the Zero. Its rate of climb was an impressive 3,500 feet per minute, and it could operate at a combat ceiling of 37,300 feet. In essence, the Hellcat could climb faster, fly higher, and dive away from any engagement at will, controlling the very geometry of the fight. Yet raw performance was meaningless without the tactics to harness it. The conceptual breakthrough came from Commander John Jimmy Thatch, who had previously developed the life-saving Thatch-Weave defensive maneuver for the outclassed Wildcats. Now, with the Hellcat's capabilities, Navy tacticians crafted an offensive doctrine that would prove utterly devastating to the Japanese. Never engage the Zero in a turning dogfight. Utilize superior speed and power to execute boom and zoom attacks. Perpetually maintain the altitude advantage. Prioritize teamwork and coordinated attacks over individual heroics. Relentlessly exploit the Zero's lack of armor with concentrated 50 caliber firepower. This new doctrine was drilled into pilots with relentless repetition at training squadrons like those at Naval Air Station Punene in Hawaii. Aviators were conditioned to resist the most primal instinct in a fighter pilot, to turn and fight. Instead, they practiced high-speed diving attacks, the boom, firing disciplined bursts into a target and then using their excess energy to climb back to a safe altitude, the zoom, before the slower climbing Zeros could even react. They trained to fight in mutually supporting pairs and 4-plane divisions, creating overlapping fields of fire that transformed chaotic dogfights into methodical, coordinated executions. The psychological preparation was equally critical. Fighter direction officers and instructors hammered a new mindset into the pilots. Trust your aircraft's advantages. Your Hellcat is tougher, it's faster, and it's better armed. Do not fight their fight. Force them to fight yours, a fight for which they are completely unprepared. By June 1944, this transformation was complete. 15 carrier air groups had fully transitioned to the Hellcat, and over 2,500 pilots had been thoroughly indoctrinated in the new tactical paradigm. The aircraft heading towards the Philippine Sea represented not merely a technological upgrade, but a complete reimagining of naval air combat. The stage was set for the largest carrier battle in history. Vice Admiral Ozawa's first mobile fleet sortied with 430 aircraft, predominantly A6M Zeros, their pilots operating on tactics and assumptions forged in earlier victories. They expected to face improved American fighters, but they anticipated a familiar form of combat. A swirling, turning dogfight where Japanese skill and Zero agility would once again prevail. They had no conception of the storm that was about to break upon them. The F6F Hellcat was not just a better fighter. It was a systemic counter to Japanese aerial warfare, designed from the outset to negate every single advantage the Zero possessed. The Japanese were meticulously preparing for the battle. They knew how to fight. The Americans were bringing a battle the Japanese could not even conceive of. The Turkey Shoot. A day of reckoning. On June 19, 1944, D-Day for Operation Forager, the new American doctrine was put to the ultimate test. At 08:23 hours, the first combat deployment of massed Hellcat squadrons occurred 200 miles west of Guam. Japanese scout planes had located Task Force 58, and Vice Admiral Ozawa, confident in his plan, launched his first strike wave. 69 aircraft, mostly Zeros, with orders to destroy the American carriers using the same tactics that had brought them success since 1941. According to the after-action reports of Air Group 15, radar operators aboard the USS Lexington detected the incoming raid at 09:59 hours at a range of 150 miles. Fighter direction officers, FDOs, the unsung architects of the coming victory, began calmly vectoring Hellcat Combat Air Patrols, CAP, toward the threat. Lieutenant Commander David McCampbell, commanding Fighting Squadron 15, VF-15, received his intercept coordinates at 10:07 hours. His division of 4 Hellcats turned west, climbing efficiently to 25,000 feet, 5,000 feet above the approaching Japanese formation. What happened next was documented in after-action reports with chilling, clinical precision. Hellcat divisions executed near-vertical attacks from their superior altitude. The enemy fighters, following their doctrine, instinctively attempted to engage in turning combat. The American pilots, adhering to their training, maintained their energy advantage, steadfastly refusing horizontal maneuvering. The results were stark. 42 enemy aircraft destroyed, 3 Hellcats damaged, 0 Hellcats lost. The numbers alone could not capture the paradigm shift. Japanese pilots, encountering Hellcats in force for the first time, employed their standard playbook, initiating tight, climbing turns to get onto the Americans' tails, relying on the Zero's sublime turn radius to gain a firing solution. But the Hellcats simply weren't there to be turned with. McCampbell's report noted, "We dove through their formation at 450 mmHg, fired concentrated bursts, then climbed back to altitude using our superior power. The Zeros couldn't follow our climb rate. Those that tried to pursue stalled out and became easy targets for our covering division." The tactical revolution was complete. Every assumption Japanese pilots held about aerial combat had become a deadly liability. The physics of destruction became gruesomely apparent in the gun camera footage analyzed after the battle. The 650 caliber guns of the Hellcat, converging their fire at 300 yards, created a literal cone of destruction that could saw a Zero's wing off or tear its fuselage in half. The armor-piercing incendiary rounds would easily penetrate the Zero's unsealed fuel tanks. Without self-sealing technology, a single well-placed hit often led to a catastrophic fireball. As the day wore on, the slaughter only intensified. Ozawa launched his second strike at 11:07 hours, a massive formation of 130 aircraft, including his most experienced pilots, veterans of Pearl Harbor and the Indian Ocean raids. They expected to overwhelm American defenses through sheer numbers and skill. Instead, they flew into a meticulously orchestrated aerial ambush. Task Force 58's fighter direction had evolved into a precise science. Radar tracking identified formations over 100 miles out. FDOs then stacked Hellcat divisions at multiple altitudes, high cover at 27,000 feet, middle interceptors at 20,000 feet, and low patrols at 15,000 feet. The Japanese formations, laboriously climbing to attack altitude, flew directly into a three-dimensional killing zone. Lieutenant Alexander Vrasiu, flying from the USS Lexington, described the engagement in his combat report. Tally-ho at 11:32 hours. 50-plus bandits, Angels 18. Executed overhead attack with division. Selected zero lagging formation. Diving attack, 500 mmH indicated. Observed strikes on wings and fuselage. Aircraft exploded. Pulled up for altitude. Second attack on different target. Repeated 6 times. Splashed 6 confirmed in 8 minutes. Never turned with them once. Just boom and zoom. Boom and zoom. Fraciu's 6 victories in a single engagement would become the stuff of legend, but he was merely one of dozens of Hellcat pilots performing similar executions. Radio intercepts decoded by the Fleet Radio Unit Pacific, FRUPAC, captured the growing bewilderment and despair in Japanese command communications. 11:47 hours. Enemy fighters refuse close combat. Request tactics guidance. 12:03 hours. American fighters climbing away from our pursuit, unable to engage. 12:15 hours. Heavy losses. Enemy using unknown tactics. Need immediate support. 12:28 hours. Formation breaking. Cannot maintain cohesion under vertical attacks. The 3rd and 4th Japanese strike waves suffered the same fate. By the time Ozawa launched his final offensive wave of 82 aircraft, Hellcat squadron leaders had already refined their tactics further. Lieutenant Commander Ernest Wood of Fighting Squadron 27, VF-27, pioneered what became known as the mowing machine pattern. His 12 Hellcats formed a horizontal line at 24,000 feet, and then dove simultaneously through the Japanese formation in a coordinated sweep. The concentrated firepower from 72 machine guns created an impassable wall of lead. Wood's combat report stated with stark clarity, formation dove line abreast at 14:25 hours. Each pilot assigned sector of enemy formation. Firing commenced at 800 yards, ceased at 300 yards. Observed 16 enemy aircraft destroyed or critically damaged in single pass. Reformed at altitude. Repeated attack pattern. Enemy formation completely disrupted. No effective return fire experienced. The psychological impact was as devastating as the physical destruction. For the first time in the Pacific War, Japanese naval aviators were seen breaking formation and fleeing before ever reaching their targets. The Bushido Code, which had sustained pilots through the trials of Midway and the Coral Sea, shattered against a form of combat that rendered individual courage and skill almost irrelevant. When the sun set on June 19th, the Butcher's Bill revealed the scale of the American victory. Official U.S. Navy tabulations recorded Japanese aircraft launched, 373. Japanese aircraft returning, approximately 130 American aircraft lost in air combat, 23 Japanese pilots killed or missing, 243. But the true catastrophe for Japan was qualitative, not just quantitative. They had lost not just planes, but the core of their naval aviation. Irreplaceable veteran pilots with thousands of hours of combat experience, the very instructors and squadron leaders who formed the institutional backbone of their air arm. The Hellcat hadn't just won a battle, it had decapitated Japanese naval air power. That evening, American submarines compounded the disaster. The USS Albacore torpedoed and sank Ozawa's flagship, the carrier Taiho, and the USS Kavala sent the veteran carrier Shokaku to the bottom. The combination of aerial annihilation and submarine attack crippled Japan's first mobile fleet as an effective offensive force. The legacy of dominance, closing the vice. The victory in the Philippine Sea was not an isolated event, but a harbinger of total Allied air supremacy. The kill ratio established on that day, approximately 19:1, would hold steady for the remainder of the war. For every Hellcat lost to a Japanese fighter, 19 Japanese aircraft were destroyed. This was not a matter of chance. It was the inevitable result of a superior system of technology, training, and tactics. The Hellcat itself continued to evolve. The F6F5 variant, introduced in early 1945, featured a more powerful 2,200 horsepower engine, a redesigned cowling for better visibility, and provisions for rockets and bombs, transforming the pure fighter into a lethal, multi-role platform. Marine Corps squadrons, flying from captured island airfields, adopted the Hellcat with devastating effect, using it for both air superiority and close air support with equal proficiency. The lessons of the Philippine Sea were applied with ruthless efficiency in every subsequent campaign. In the battles of the Philippine Sea at Iwo Jima and over Okinawa, Hellcats established a dominion so complete that the skies belonged to the Americans. During the latter campaign, the Hellcat was the primary defender against the desperate kamikaze threat. Refined combat air patrol procedures with Hellcats stacked and vectored by expert FDOs achieved interception rates of over 90%, destroying thousands of suicide aircraft before they could reach the fleet. By war's end, the operational statistics of the F6F Hellcat were unparalleled in the history of aerial warfare. Total Hellcats produced 12,275 total aerial victories, 5,223, accounting for 56% of all U.S. Navy air-to-air victories in the war. Total Hellcats lost to enemy aircraft. 270 overall kill-to-loss ratio, 19.3 to 1. Number of aces who scored all or most of their victories in the Hellcat, 307. The F6F Hellcat was more than a machine. It was a war-winning weapon. It embodied the American industrial and intellectual response to a formidable enemy. By correctly identifying the enemy's strengths and weaknesses, and by designing a weapon and a doctrine to systematically exploit them, the United States Navy did not just defeat the Japanese Zero, it rendered an entire military philosophy obsolete. The streams of .50 caliber fire that swept the Pacific skies from 1943 to 1945 didn't just shoot down aircraft. They heralded the dawn of a new era in naval aviation, an era defined by power, protection, and overwhelming firepower.